It's weird how some things stick with you forever, like the smell of chlorine on a summer day or the hollow feeling of your parents forgetting your birthday. My name's Jake. I'm 27 now, but when I think back to the moment I realized I didn't really exist in my own family, I was 12. It was the morning of my birthday, a Saturday, and I came downstairs expecting maybe pancakes, maybe one of those corny balloons my mom would tie to the back of the kitchen chair when I was younger. But there was nothing. Not even a happy birthday from either of them. They were too busy getting my older brother, Ryan, ready for his tennis match. He was 17 then, full of swagger, wearing his varsity jacket like a king wears a crown, and talking nonstop about some regional qualifier he was sure he'd win. My dad was zipping up Ryan's gear bag like it was a briefcase filled with gold. My mom handed him a protein bar and kissed him on the forehead. I stood there in the hallway, waiting, watching. Eventually, I said it out loud. "Hey, it's my birthday." My mom paused for a second. "Oh, right. Happy birthday, sweetie," she mumbled, not even looking up from tying Ryan's shoes. Something, by the way, he was fully capable of doing himself. My dad didn't say anything. He just said, "Come on, let's beat traffic," and they left. That morning, I ate cereal by myself and watched the balloons in the neighbor's yard, probably for their kid's party, sway in the wind. That's how it always was with Ryan. Everything revolved around him. If he had a soccer game, we all went. If he had a tantrum, the world stopped. If I got an A, it was well done. If he got a B+, it was a full-on celebration. They poured money into him, private tutors, sports coaches, music lessons, even a dang public speaking coach when he decided he might run for student council. I was the tag-along, the afterthought. If Ryan was a first draft being constantly edited and polished, I was the scribble in the margins. By high school, it was clear how lopsided things were. Ryan got a $30,000 Jeep for his 18th birthday. Brand new, silver, with custom leather seats and a bow on top. My dad handed him the keys in the driveway like it was a scene from a commercial. Everyone clapped. I was 16. I didn't even have a bike that fit me anymore. My old one, a rusty, hand-me-down BMX, had a broken brake and a chain that slipped every few feet. My dad once said I didn't need a new one because I wasn't really the outdoor type. But the real kicker? When Ryan turned 20, my dad gave him a job, just like that. "Come work with me," he said. "Start learning the ropes." My dad owned a mid-sized construction supply company. Not flashy, but steady. He'd built it from scratch, and he was always talking about legacy and the future of the business. Apparently, that only meant Ryan. Never once did he ask if I was interested. I was already working part-time at a bookstore after school, saving up for community college. I remember overhearing him tell my uncle at a family gathering that I wasn't business-minded and that I liked to keep to myself. Like being quiet disqualified me from ever being part of the family plan. I kept my head down, studied hard, learned how to code, built websites on an old laptop I'd bought off Craigslist with my own savings. I didn't expect praise. I didn't even really want it anymore. I just wanted freedom. Still, every once in a while, the little digs would slip in. My mom once said I looked scruffy when I showed up to a family dinner after pulling an all-nighter freelancing. My dad laughed and said, "Well, not all of us are born with hustle like Ryan." It was like I could never be enough. Not loud enough, not charismatic enough, not worthy enough. I moved out at 20 and never asked for a dime. Ryan, on the other hand, still lived at home well into his 20s. Rent-free, utilities paid, and with a revolving door of girlfriends who always seemed vaguely annoyed to be at family dinners. He'd roll his eyes when our aunts asked what he was doing these days. "Just helping Dad run the show," he'd say, like he was the heir to an empire. Meanwhile, I was taking online classes, building apps at night, and turning small freelance gigs into something real, something mine. They didn't know that, though. No one in my family really asked. They assumed I was scraping by, probably still working at that bookstore. It was easier that way. Let them think I was average. Let Ryan think he'd won. But something shifted a few months ago. It was my aunt, Dad's younger sister, who noticed. She invited me over for coffee one Sunday, just the two of us, and said, "Jake, you look good." Like, good. What's going on? I don't know why, but I told her. I told her about the app that took off. About the buyout offer I accepted that left me with more money than I'd ever imagined. I told her I'd quietly invested in a few rental properties, started 2 more ventures, and was technically a millionaire now. Not that I was flaunting it. She blinked, stunned. Does your family know? I shook my head. They never asked. And I wasn't planning on telling them, either. Not until the family barbecue. It was one of those long-standing traditions. Every summer, my parents would host a massive cookout in the backyard. All the aunts and uncles, cousins, distant relatives. Ryan was always the star of the show, walking around with a beer in hand, cracking jokes, talking loudly about business deals he didn't understand, or how he and Dad were crushing it at work. I usually stood by the grill or helped the kids with their games. Out of the spotlight. As usual. But this time, things were different. This time, I didn't arrive in my usual beat-up sedan. I'd given it away months ago. I showed up in a sleek black Audi, understated but clean. And I wore a simple but tailored outfit. Nothing flashy, but expensive if you knew what to look for. I brought a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's weekly groceries. And I watched, amused, as heads turned. Ryan's eyes narrowed the moment he saw me. I saw his jaw clench. But he said nothing. Not right away. People started asking questions. Where have you been, Jake? You look great. What are you up to these days? And I gave vague answers. Just working. Keeping busy. I saw Ryan watching me like a hawk, probably trying to figure out why his little brother was suddenly the center of attention. Then someone, I think it was my cousin Julia, asked directly. So what do you do, Jake? Like, for work? I smiled. Took a sip of wine. Tech stuff, I said. I sold a couple of apps. Invested a bit. Nothing huge. Ryan laughed, loud and fake. Yeah, sure. Jake's the next Zuckerberg. I shrugged. Nah, I just play it smart. Quietly. That word, quietly, did something to him. I saw the flicker in his eyes. Like he knew I was saying something more. He didn't blow up right then. Not yet. But the stage was set. What happened next would tear the family wide open. And it all started with a single, innocent question from my aunt, just loud enough for everyone to hear. So, Jake, are you planning to take over Dad's company someday? I didn't even get the chance to answer. Ryan did. And that's when the mask came off. Ryan didn't even let the question breathe. Why would Jake take over the company? He scoffed, practically laughing as he stood up a little straighter, his beer sloshing slightly in his hand. He's never lifted a finger for it. I've been working with Dad for years. I know the clients. I know the vendors. Jake's just doing whatever it is he does online. There was a beat of silence. I didn't flinch. I just looked at him, eyes steady, lips neutral. But inside, something cracked. Not snapped. Not exploded. Just cracked. Like the slow, inevitable split in a frozen windshield. You know it's coming. You see it spreading. And no matter what you do, it's never going back to what it was. My aunt, the one who'd asked the question, blinked. She glanced between us and said, I just thought. Maybe Jake had been doing something worth talking about too. Oh, I'm sure he's busy, Ryan added with a forced chuckle. But let's be real. Jake's never been the business type. You said it yourself, Dad. My dad, who'd been manning the grill like some king at his post, turned slightly. Ryan's been a real asset, he said. He stepped up. He's responsible. There it was again. The invisibility cloak. Thrown over me with such casual ease. But this time, I didn't stay quiet. I didn't plan on speaking. I didn't come to that barbecue to stir the pot. But there's only so many times you can be erased from your own story before your voice finds its way out. I've been busy building something too, I said calmly. It just didn't involve asking Dad for a job. A few heads turned. The cousins nearby stopped poking at the chips and salsa. Ryan snorted. You mean like your little side projects? No, I said. Like the startup I sold last year. The one that paid for my condo. And my car. And a couple other things. My mom's head jerked up. You bought a condo? I nodded. Downtown. Paid in full. Ryan's smirk faltered, just slightly. Wait, you actually made money off one of those apps? More than a little, I replied, keeping my tone light. I don't really talk about it much. Wasn't really the kind of thing anyone seemed curious about. My dad gave a polite, confused laugh, like he wasn't sure if this was a joke. You're telling me you bought property? With what? Freelance money. That was the first sting. Not the question itself, but the complete disbelief in his voice. As if I were a child claiming I'd built a spaceship in the backyard. I didn't freelance, I said. I built and sold a software tool that helped small e-commerce shops automate inventory tracking. One of the big retail back-end firms bought it. Then I started a SaaS platform. Now I have 2 small teams and passive income from 3 properties. Ryan's smirk was gone now. He stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're kidding, he said flatly. Since when? A while now, I replied. There was a long silence. People were looking around. My cousin whispered something to her boyfriend. My aunt, the same one who'd asked, was beaming, clearly enjoying the shift in power. But it wasn't just pride. It was something else. Something calculating. That's when she said it. Loudly. Clearly. Well, if your dad were fair, he'd offer you a stake in the company, Jake. You're the only one who actually built something from scratch. The backyard might as well have frozen over. My dad blinked. My mom looked stunned. Ryan. Ryan turned a deep shade of red. You think I don't work hard? He snapped at her. She raised a brow. You do what your dad tells you. That's not the same thing. My dad stepped in fast, trying to lighten the mood. Okay, let's not turn this into a debate. It's a family party. But the damage was done. Ryan couldn't let it go. Not after that. Not after losing the spotlight in his own kingdom. For the rest of the barbecue, he hovered. Asked weird questions. What kind of car did you say you got again? How much did that wine cost? So, you actually own a company now? He was digging, trying to find cracks, trying to find some way to downplay it. I stayed calm. Polite. I didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. That, more than anything, probably drove him crazy. Later that evening, after most of the guests had left and the backyard was quieter, I went inside to grab something from the kitchen. That's when I overheard them. Ryan and my parents. In the dining room. He embarrassed me, Ryan was saying. At my house. It's not your house, my mom whispered, but weakly. My dad added, we didn't know he'd made money. He's never mentioned it before. Because he's sneaky, Ryan snapped. You think he just happened to show up in that car with that watch and that smug face? He wanted this. He planned this. He wanted to make me look like some trust fund idiot. I froze in the hallway. Part of me wanted to walk in and set the record straight. But another part wanted to hear what they really thought. You're overreacting, my mom said, though again, there was no conviction behind it. I've been here, working, helping Dad with everything. And now suddenly Jake's the golden child because he made a few bucks online. Ryan, my dad began, but Ryan cut him off. No way. You promised me. I've earned this. The business is mine. He doesn't get to just waltz in and take that from me. Take that from me. Like I was stealing something that was never even offered. I slipped away before they noticed me, heart pounding. Not from fear. Not from sadness. From clarity. This wasn't just about favoritism anymore. This was about Ryan feeling entitled to a legacy that didn't even exist yet. A future he assumed would be handed to him, just like everything else in his life. And I was a threat. A mirror. One that showed him everything he wasn't. A week passed. Then 2. Radio silence from my parents. No calls. No texts. Just quiet tension humming underneath everything. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from my cousin Julia. Hey, she said, hesitant. I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but Ryan, he went to your dad and asked him to freeze you out of the will. I blinked. Wait. What? Yeah. He told your dad you were manipulating everyone. That you only showed up to the barbecue to make a scene and steal attention. And he suggested that if something happened to your parents, you'd probably sell the business to the Chinese or something ridiculous like that. I sat in stunned silence. That's not all, she said. I overheard him talking to your mom too. He told her that if they didn't protect him legally, he'd walk. Said he didn't want to waste another 5 years just to have you come in and inherit half the company. It didn't even feel real. The same guy who used to give me noogies and steal my Halloween candy was now lobbying to erase me from the family. All because I dared to succeed on my own. I thanked Julia. Hung up. Stared at the wall. That was the moment it changed. All of it. I'd tolerated the jabs, the years of invisibility, the backhanded compliments, the favoritism. I'd swallowed every birthday they forgot, every achievement they dismissed, every time they looked past me in favor of their loud, flashy golden boy. But trying to legally erase me? That was a line. And I don't care how dramatic this sounds, something in me snapped. Not with rage. Not with violence. With purpose. I wasn't going to fight him with words. Or threats. Or drama. No, I was going to do it the same way I'd built everything else in my life. Quietly. Strategically. But I wouldn't be the only one revealing secrets. Because Julia wasn't the only one who'd heard things. My aunt, the one who'd asked the question at the barbecue, had a secret of her own. And she'd been waiting for the right moment to reveal it. All she needed was a spark. And Ryan had just lit the match. I don't know what I expected after that phone call from Julia. Maybe a confrontation. Maybe some kind of denial from my parents. A half-hearted apology. Something. Instead, I got silence. Not the kind that heals. The kind that confirms everything you feared. I waited 3 days before calling my mom. She picked up on the third ring, her voice a little too bright. "Hi, sweetheart." "Hey," I said. I didn't ask how she was. I didn't want small talk. "So, I heard some things," I began. "About Ryan. About the will." There was a pause, then the sound of her exhale. "Jake, we didn't want to upset you. Did you change it?" Another pause. A longer one. "Your father and I have been talking. Ryan's worked very hard at the company. You've made your own way, and we're so proud of you. But the business, it's always been the plan for him." I felt it in my chest. Not a punch. Not a stab. Just that quiet, dull ache that seeps in when a truth you hoped might not be real gets confirmed. "I never asked for the business," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I never asked for anything, actually." "I know," she said softly. "You've always been independent. You don't need anything." That was it. That was their logic. I didn't need anything, so I got nothing. Ryan needed, so he got it all, even when he didn't actually earn it. He needed affirmation, attention, money, space. I needed none of those things, apparently. I just existed to clap from the sidelines. I hung up before the conversation could veer into more rationalizations. I wasn't angry in that moment. I was just numb. But the numbness didn't last long. That weekend, I went for a walk. I didn't even know where I was headed. I just started moving. Past rows of brick apartment buildings, little corner cafes, old oak trees shedding their leaves in the wind. I ended up at a park, the kind with peeling paint on the benches, and an old jungle gym that probably hadn't been replaced since the early 2000s. I sat there, hands in my coat pockets, and watched a kid try to climb the monkey bars while his mom stood nearby, cheering him on. He slipped twice, then made it on the third try. She clapped, he grinned, and something in my chest twisted. No one ever clapped for me. But I clapped for myself. Quietly. In the dark. When I closed my first freelance contract. When I sold my app. When I got the email that the wire transfer had gone through. Every milestone, every win, it was just me. And that's when I realized something that changed everything. I'd been waiting for a family that wasn't coming. Waiting for validation from people who'd already made up their minds about who I was. I thought success would earn me a seat at their table, but I never even liked the food they served. So I built my own. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But the moment I stopped looking for their approval, something in me unlocked. I doubled down on my projects. I stopped playing small. I started mentoring young developers, speaking at tech meetups, even joined a small angel investment group. Every time I helped someone else climb a rung I'd once slipped on, it healed a little more of that cracked windshield inside me. And the money? That came in waves. The second SaaS tool I'd built took off like wildfire. A project management integration for remote teams that just happened to launch at the right time. Within 6 months, it was featured in a couple industry newsletters, then picked up by a mid-tier influencer in the startup space. I woke up one morning to over 2,000 new paid users and a flood of emails. That week, I hired a small team. 4 people. Talented, hungry, kind. We built a culture from scratch. No egos. No golden boys. Just people who showed up and gave their best. I rented a small office space downtown. I could have stayed remote, but I wanted somewhere to go. A place that was mine. Every morning, I'd grab coffee from the same corner shop and walk in through the glass doors, smiling at the simple decal on the window that said the company's name, Lumen Forge. People thought it was fancy. It wasn't. It was 1,200 square feet with squeaky floors and a tiny kitchenette. But it was mine. And slowly, the weight started lifting. I wasn't the invisible one anymore. At least, not to myself. But my family? They stayed distant. Occasionally, my mom would send a text. "Hope you're doing okay." Or "Saw something on the news about tech layoffs. Are you safe?" I'd reply with a short, "All good. Thanks for checking in." My dad didn't reach out at all. Ryan certainly didn't. I didn't even get an invite to Thanksgiving that year. Julia later told me they assumed I'd be too busy. The funny part? I was busy, but not in the way they thought. I'd taken a solo trip to Kyoto, something I'd dreamed of since I was 16. I hiked the Fushimi Inari Trail at dawn, sipped green tea in a centuries-old temple, and journaled under cherry blossoms even though it was out of season. It didn't matter. I was there, living, breathing. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything to anyone. But the peace didn't last. Not when my aunt called me again, months later, and said, "You might want to sit down." I was in the office, going over some UX revisions when her name popped up. I answered with a casual, "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was tense, controlled. "I know you've been staying out of the drama," she said. "But Ryan's up to something again." I closed my laptop slowly. "Go on." "He's been telling people you exaggerated your success. Said the car was leased. The condo's rented. That the whole thing's some online scam. And," she hesitated, "he's been dropping hints to your dad that maybe you should be investigated." I blinked. Investigated? For fraud? Or something like that. He said there's no way you made that much money that fast. That it has to be shady. I felt the slow burn rise up my neck. Did Dad believe him? There was a pause. He didn't say anything. But he didn't exactly defend you either. I didn't answer. She added, "Look, Jake, I know you've tried to rise above it. But this isn't going away. And honestly, I think it's time." "Time for what?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "For you to know the rest." She paused. Then, in a low voice, said, "Ryan isn't just the golden child. He's not even your dad's only son." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I probably shouldn't say more over the phone," she said. "But there's something your parents never told you. Something they've kept from both of you for a long time." My heart started pounding. "Why now?" "Because Ryan's about to cross a line he can't come back from. And I think it's only fair you know why things have always been the way they are." I looked out the office window, at the skyline beyond. Everything felt different. Tilted. "You busy tonight?" she asked. I swallowed. "No." "Good. Come by after 6. I'll have coffee ready." "And Jake?" "Yeah. Bring a notebook." That night, as I drove through quiet city streets toward her house, something in my gut told me that whatever I was about to hear would change everything. Not just how I saw Ryan, or my parents, but myself. Who I was, who I'd always been, and why I'd never really stood a chance in that house to begin with. I pulled into her driveway just as the porch light flicked on. She stood in the doorway, waiting, holding something in her hand. A folder, thick, worn, and labeled in my father's handwriting. My full name. "Come in," she said, her face unreadable. "We've got a lot to talk about." When my aunt opened the folder, the first thing I saw was a photo. It was old, the edges curled, the ink slightly faded, but unmistakably my dad. Younger, mid-30s maybe. Next to him, a woman I didn't recognize. Blonde, stylish, smiling wide. In her arms a baby. My aunt slid the photo across the coffee table. "That's you," she said gently. I blinked. "That's not Mom." "No, it's not." I stared at the photo again, waiting for my brain to catch up. "She's your biological mother. Her name was Natalie," my aunt continued. "Your dad was with her before he met your mom. You were born just a few months before Ryan. It's complicated." The room was quiet except for the ticking wall clock. "She died when you were a baby. Car accident. Your dad was devastated, but she'd listed him on your birth certificate. When she passed, he took custody without fighting it. Your grandparents on her side weren't in the picture. Your dad met your mom less than a year later, and she agreed to raise you. But I wasn't hers," I whispered. My aunt nodded. "And she never let him forget it." I leaned back, heart pounding. "She always blamed Natalie," she said. "Said it was a reminder of your dad's old life. She tried, I think. But when Ryan was born, it was like everything changed. Suddenly, he was the clean slate, the perfect do-over. And you were just the leftover." I didn't speak. I couldn't. It was like hearing a language you understood but never expected to. "All these years," I muttered. "I thought I was just less. Not good enough. But it wasn't that. It wasn't me. It was never me." My aunt reached across the table and rested a hand on mine. "No, Jake. It wasn't." The folder held more. Old court documents. Letters. A tiny hospital bracelet with my name, written in faded marker. My aunt had kept all of it. She told me Natalie had been her friend once, briefly, and she'd tried to stay connected after the accident. But my mom pushed her out too. Everything to do with the past had to go. I left her house that night in a daze, the folder tucked under my arm like some ancient relic. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just sat in my car for almost an hour, staring at nothing, letting the engine run. By the next morning, I'd made a decision. This wouldn't break me. This would fuel me. If they wanted to erase me from the family, then fine. I'd show them just how dangerous it is to underestimate the person you left behind. not through revenge born of spite, but through one born of cold, deliberate justice. The old me, the one who sought their approval, who played nice, who showed up with polite smiles and harmless wine. He was gone. The man who walked into the Lumen Forge office that Monday morning wasn't just a founder. He was an architect, and he was about to build a reckoning. First, I gathered information, not just about my family, but about my options. I didn't want to destroy their lives. That wasn't the goal, but I did want the truth to have teeth. I wanted Ryan, the golden heir, the entitled manipulator, to feel the weight of accountability for once in his life. I wanted my parents to look at me and see me, not the placeholder, not the quiet disappointment. Me. I started by meeting with a lawyer, a friend of a friend who specialized in family estates and business succession law. I laid everything out for him. The will change, the manipulation, the attempts to discredit me. He leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. Do you have any interest in the business itself? No, I said truthfully. I have no desire to be part of it. But I do want to make sure I'm not being cut out illegally. And I want to be protected if Ryan tries to drag my name through the mud. He nodded. Let's get you a copy of the most recent will. You may have legal standing to contest it if your father was manipulated. Over the next few weeks, I built a quiet paper trail. My aunt gave me more background, emails, notes, even a voicemail my mom had left her years ago where she said, "Jake will be fine. He's smart. But Ryan needs this." That was their mantra. I also started digging into the business. Ryan wasn't the genius he pretended to be. In fact, the deeper I looked, the more I realized he'd been bleeding the company, misusing funds, writing off personal expenses. He'd even used the company card to buy a Rolex, the same one he wore to that family barbecue. It was all documented, if you knew where to look. So I hired a private forensic accountant. 2 weeks later, he came back with a folder of his own. And this one was nuclear. Ryan had been shifting company assets into a shell business registered under a friend's name. It was sloppy, arrogant, and likely illegal. If it came to light, my dad's company could be in serious trouble: tax evasion, fraud, even possible charges if they didn't act fast. I sat with the folder in my hands, heart hammering. I finally had it. Proof that the golden child had Qley feet. But I wasn't done. I needed one more piece. So I called Julia. "Can you do something for me?" I asked. "Depends," she said cautiously. "Ryan, is he still dating that girl? What's her name?" "Amber?" "Yeah. They're rocky, but still together." "What? Would she talk to you?" Julia laughed. "Absolutely. She hates him." Within days, Julia sent me screenshots. Ryan had been bragging in private texts, to friends, to Amber, to random buddies, about how he was going to lock Jake out of everything and claim the family business outright. He even joked that I'd probably crawl back to them eventually once my little app money ran out. Screenshots, dates, context, everything I needed. With my 3 folders, the birth secret, the financial proof, and the manipulation receipts, I began to plan. But I wouldn't go in guns blazing. No, I wanted a stage, an audience. And the perfect opportunity fell right into my lap. My dad's 60th birthday. He was planning a big party. Dinner at a private banquet hall, extended family invited, speeches, slideshow, the works. Ryan was spearheading the whole thing, of course. Julia caught wind of it and sent me the invite. I wasn't even on the original list. But she added me manually. "This is it," she wrote in the message. "If you want your moment, this is the one." I RSVP'd, and I started preparing. I rented a black suit. Clean, tailored, modern. Not flashy. But when I wore it, I looked every inch the CEO Ryan pretended to be. I had the folders scanned, labeled, and tucked away on a sleek tablet. And I called in a favor from a friend of mine, a professional videographer who owed me one. Discreet recording, I told him. Nothing fancy. Just capture reactions. Audio clear. "Can you do that?" He smirked. "Easily." The plan wasn't to explode the room. Not yet. The plan was to set the table and serve the truth, course by course, in front of everyone who ever watched me sit in silence. Aunt Denise offered to help. She knew my timing. She knew what to say. She'd be the one to ask the question, just like before. All I had to do was wait. And when the moment came, I'd stand. Quietly, calmly, and show them who I really was. The forgotten son, the silent heir, and the one holding the receipts. But that moment, that exact second when everything started to unravel, you're not going to believe how it happened. Because Ryan, in his arrogance, in his need to dominate every room, couldn't help himself. He forced the moment. And when he did, I walked right through the door he didn't even realize he'd opened. I showed up to the party 15 minutes early. The banquet hall was polished to perfection. Navy tablecloths, gold-trimmed menus, the faint scent of citrus cleaner still lingering in the air. A slideshow of my dad's life played on a massive screen near the stage. His high school photos, his wedding day, Ryan holding a Little League trophy. There wasn't a single picture of me. Not one. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel bitter. Not anymore. I felt ready. I found my table. Back row, near the wall, of course, and took a slow breath. I glanced over my shoulder toward the entrance, just in time to see Ryan strutting in like he owned the place. Amber clung to his arm with a bored expression, her hair perfectly curled, her lips pressed into a polite smile. Ryan was wearing that same Rolex, the same one he'd bought with company money. I watched as people greeted him like he was royalty. Backslaps, handshakes, laughs. He soaked it up, eyes darting from table to table, already scanning for someone to impress. He didn't notice me. Not yet. But he would. The room filled quickly. Relatives I hadn't seen in years. Old family friends. Former co-workers. Even a few clients from my dad's company, judging by the branded folders on one of the front tables. And then, finally, my parents arrived. My dad walked into a small wave of applause. His salt and pepper hair neatly combed, a tailored blazer sitting stiffly on his shoulders. He waved, grinned, looked around the room. When he saw me, something flickered across his face. Surprise. Then uncertainty. My mom whispered something to him, her eyes narrowing. I held their gaze. Didn't smile. Didn't blink. Let them wonder. The evening moved fast after that. Dinner was served. Speeches were made. Ryan gave a glowing introduction, talking about legacy and vision, and how proud he was to follow in his father's footsteps. The crowd nodded along. Polite applause. Then came the open mic. And that's when Aunt Denise stood up. She didn't grab the mic right away. She just raised a glass and cleared her throat. I've known John, she gestured to my dad, since we were kids. I remember the day he brought Jake home. A tiny thing, barely a year old. Scared, quiet, but smart. Always watching. People turned. Heads tilted. My dad's jaw clenched. My aunt smiled gently. And I remember thinking, he's going to be the one who surprises us all someday. There was an awkward pause. My mom shifted in her seat. Ryan gave a little laugh, trying to wave it off. Anyway, she continued, tonight's about family. And family, to me, isn't about blood or noise or flash. It's about integrity. About who shows up, even when no one's clapping. She raised her glass toward me. To the quiet ones. A few others raised their glasses too. Hesitantly. Curiously. And then it happened. Ryan stood. Okay, he said, laughing tightly. Let's not make this weird. I mean, we all know Jake's doing great for himself, right? I mean, what was it? An app? A YouTube channel? Dropshipping? A few scattered laughs. Mostly from the younger cousins who didn't know better. I stayed seated. Actually, I said, calmly, I'd like to say a few words. Every eye turned. I walked to the front, tablet in hand, suit perfectly pressed, expression unreadable. Ryan sat back down slowly, arms crossed. I took the mic. Thanks, everyone. I wasn't planning to speak tonight, but I guess I should have known I'd eventually have to. I paused, looking at my parents. I've spent a long time being quiet, being careful, staying in the background. And for a while, I thought maybe that was just who I was. The invisible kid. The one who didn't need anything. The one who wouldn't be missed. People shifted in their chairs. My mom stared at the tablecloth. My dad looked away. But I've learned a lot in the last few years. About who I am, where I come from, and why things have always felt different. I tapped the tablet. Behind me, the projector screen changed. Gone was the slideshow of Ryan and my dad. In its place, the scanned photo. My dad. Natalie. Me in her arms. There was an audible gasp. My mother's head snapped up. My father turned pale. Ryan muttered, "What the?" "This," I said, gesturing to the image, "is my beginning. A truth I only recently discovered. My biological mother. Natalie. She passed when I was a baby. My father took me in. And later, he married someone else. Someone who agreed to raise me, but never really accepted me." I turned to the crowd. I'm not saying this for pity. I don't want sympathy. I just want to make something very clear. My silence wasn't ignorance. It was restraint. I tapped the tablet again. New slide. Screenshots. The ones from Amber. Ryan's texts. His plan to remove me from the will. His mockery. His bragging. The room was dead silent. Then another slide. Accounting records. Shell company transactions. The Rolex invoice. This, I said, my voice still calm, is what happens when entitlement goes unchecked. When someone assumes they're untouchable. Ryan shot to his feet. You planned this? You psycho. Sit down, I said without looking at him. The room froze. And to my astonishment, he sat. This isn't revenge, I continued. This is exposure. Transparency. I don't want the company. I don't want the house. I don't even want your approval. I've built my own life, from scratch. Without handouts. Without shortcuts. I looked directly at my father. But if you think I'm going to let someone smear my name, cut me out, and launder money through a family business while hiding behind a legacy I was never even allowed to be part of, you're wrong. I turned back to the crowd. I've already filed a report with the IRS. With the evidence I've submitted, there will be an investigation. Possibly charges. I've also hired legal counsel to contest any changes made to the family while under coercion or fraud. My dad finally stood. Jake, we can talk about this. No, I said. We can't. Not anymore. You made your choices. All of you did. I turned to my mother. She looked small. For once, unsure. I used to wonder why you hated me. Why nothing I did was ever enough. Now I know. And honestly, I don't need to carry that weight anymore. Finally, I turned to Ryan. He looked hollow. Rage and fear mixed behind his eyes. You always needed the spotlight, Ryan. You needed to be the best. The heir. The king. But kings fall. And when they do, the quiet ones are already building empires behind the curtain. I placed the mic down on the podium, walked back to my table, and left. I didn't wait for the fallout. Didn't wait to see my mom cry, or Ryan yell, or my dad crumble. I walked out of that hall and into the cool night air, the doors shutting softly behind me. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. The next few months were a storm I watched from a distance. The IRS investigation went public. Ryan tried to deny everything, but the records were airtight. The shell company was traced. The funds were misappropriated. My dad's business took a hit. Fast. Clients pulled out. Reputations collapsed. He stepped down quietly to avoid scandal. Ryan was removed from the company entirely. They offered me a stake, a chance to help rebuild. I declined. Instead, I sent a quiet donation to a scholarship fund in Natalie's name, the mother I never knew, but whose love I could now feel in the gaps between every cold memory. My aunt stayed close. So did Julia. So did a few cousins who reached out after the dust settled, apologizing for not seeing things sooner. Ryan disappeared for a while. Word got around that he'd moved states, tried to start fresh. My parents, well, I haven't heard from them. And I don't need to. Lumen Forge is thriving. My team has grown. We moved into a bigger space. One with sunlight and plants and laughter. Sometimes I walk in and just stand at the entrance for a moment, watching it all, knowing I built it. Not for revenge, not for approval, but for me. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't about destruction. It's about creation. About becoming so untouchable, so undeniable, that those who once dismissed you have no choice but to watch from the outside. And the best part? They can't take any of it away. Not anymore. Not ever again. I was never the invisible one. They just didn't know where to look.
Parties, too, I think.
Bruce parties?
Oh, yeah.
How do you know?
There's a bunch of videos of him. He got into a fist fight in an elevator with an MMA fighter.
Oh, that was at Frank Trigg, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, kind of a fist fight.
Wow.
Like a little bit of a pushing, shoving, probably. Frank Trigg would literally kill him.
I know. That's why I'm impressed, because he stood up to him.
Frank Trigg was an animal when he was young.
Yeah, I would not
And this
fuck
was
with
like,
that guy.
I think it was when Frank was still fighting.
That's crazy.
I don't think Frank really fought him back. I think that would be a very quick encounter.
But just the fact that he was up for it.
I don't know what really happened.
I think the story's online somewhere. But...
Yeah, it's Bruce's version of the story.
Yeah, it's true.
You know what I mean? I don't know. Not that Bruce is lying. Bruce might have thought he was in a fight, and Frank might have thought it was hilarious.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But Bruce did martial arts most of his life.
The craziest coincidence of all, and get your fingers ready, J-Mo. Dennis the Menace, the cartoon, was invented in England and in America on the same day.
What?
Put that in your pipe and jizz on it. Get that
What?
cooking. Oh, yeah, because they were like, oh, you must have stolen this. So they went back and researched it. They were both invented, same character, same name, on the same day and the same year.
That makes no sense.
Isn't that bananas? My brain blew up.
That literally makes no sense.
It's crazy. So that's a fun one.
How is that possible?
I don't know. Just, monkeys writing on a typewriter. Eventually you get Shakespeare. Two guys thinking of the same thing, same day, across the pond.
Maybe that's one of those things. Like, what is that called? Like Berenstein Bears? The Mandala effect.
Oh, yeah.
That's not the same thing, because that's like when it's not real. This is something that's real.
That's true.
Right. That's right. Right.
There's,
No, I'm thinking of the wrong thing.
Yeah.
What does Perplexity say? Our lovely AI sponsor, Perplexity, says there's actually two completely separate Dennis the Menace comic strip characters that debuted almost simultaneously in 1951, created independently in the UK and the US. So how would they even know about each other back then?
Oh, sorry. It's 17th and 12th, so they're 5 days apart.
Who started first? British was the 17th.
Okay.
On sale, issue dated 17 March, on sale 12 March. Created by these guys, American, on 12 March. No, basically the same day on sale. On sale the same day.
Unbelievable. Blonde
That's
hair,
insane.
overalls.
Let's make images.
And it said, go back to what the saying was again. It said, your son is a menace. Did they both say that? No.
I don't know.
Wow. Both mischievous little boys, but they look different. UK Dennis has black hair, red and black jumper. U.S. Dennis, blonde hair, overalls. They live in different fictional worlds. Creators worked entirely independently. No evidence either knew about the other before publication. So it's treated as a famous coincidence rather than copying. Wow.
Unreal. There they are, side by side.
Wow.
That kind of shit is kooky.
It's weird. That's like when rats, if you teach a rat how to get out of a maze on the East Coast, rats on the West Coast get out of the maze quicker.
No fucking way.
Yeah. There's a guy named Rupert Sheldrake. He calls it morphic resonance. He thinks there's some sort of communication that all animals have with each other all over the world that we can't quantify, that we can't measure, but it seems real.
Yeah. Well, apparently I got caught in an ant pile when I was a kid, and all the ants swarmed on me, and they all bit me at once. I felt it. I was like, ah! It was just one big wave of pain.
Oh, yeah.
They communicated.
Well, ants just immediately attack, though, as soon as you get on the ant hill.
But ants they're on another level.
You hear about the lady that fell? Her parachute didn't deploy, but she landed in an ant pile.